Welcome to Quilting on the Side, the podcast where we uncover the secrets to turning your passion for quilting into a profitable side hustle.
I'm Tori from the Quilt Patch by Tori.
And I'm Andi from True Blue Quilts. And together, we're your co-hosts on this exciting journey of creativity, entrepreneurship, and all things quilting.
We're here to help you navigate the world of quilt pattern design, course creation, digital marketing, and running an online quilt business. We've been through the ups and downs ourselves, so we know what it takes to make money from your favorite hobby.
That's right, Tori. We're going to share our experiences on how we've grown our businesses while balancing family with other paying work responsibilities. It's not always easy, but it's definitely possible. Welcome to another episode of Quilting on the Side, and we are very excited to welcome our friend Ashli Montgomery. And Tori and I both met Ashli several years ago. We were all in an online course together, and so it's been so fun, Ashli, to watch your quilting journey since then. People may have heard of your business, Quilt to End Alzheimer's, or they may know you as an author who sprinkles quilting in your fiction. So you've got a lot to share with us. How have you been doing these past few years?
I'm good. It is so fun to see you guys. And yes, it's been 4 years. So we did that class back in 2020, and it's been really fun to stay in touch and see how everyone's quilting journey has gone. But I have been very busy. I seem to like a lot of irons in the fire, and every time I think I've really focused in on one thing, I tend to see something else. It's like, ooh, that looks awesome too. Maybe I need to do a little bit of that. And I did that Enneagram test, and it was spot on. I'm a 7, and that means I like shiny objects. And the pros and the cons of being a 7 are exactly me. So I have a ton of fun with my writing career. I do write quilt fiction. I would say that my stories have a lot to do with quilts, quilters, and quilting, but the quilt does not carry the story. It's wholesome, cozy romance. So the love story and the primary couple and their friends and family, that's really what carries the story. But there is a quilt, a quilter, or some bit of quilting in every single book. So that has been a really fun way to share my quilting hobby with people that may not know much about quilting. And then you mentioned I have a nonprofit business. I started just before we all met in November of 2018. I really decided I wanted to do this thing. January 21st of 2019, Quilt to End ALZ launched. It is a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to connect quilters with the fight to end Alzheimer's disease.
And such diverse interests. How are you balancing that? Do you both, run the nonprofit and do a little bit of writing every day? Do you have kind of days blocked off for each of that? Do each of them take a season? How is that all mixed?
Yes, that's one of my goals for 2024 was to do a better job of time blocking, because in the past I've tried to just juggle everything and put out whatever fire seemed most immediate in front of me. But I really want to be a full-time writer. I want to make a career of it. I have probably 24 storylines that I've jotted down, books that I want to share and stories that I want to develop and characters that I want to get to know in my Green Hills series. So I'm making writing a priority. I write every day. I get online on a Zoom room with some people that are all over the country, and even one in Canada. And we meet from 7 a.m. my time. Most of them are Eastern, so 8 o'clock their time. We visit, then we put ourselves on mute and turn the cameras off, write for a few hours, come back together. talk about what we accomplished, what our goals are, what our word count for the day, or if we have marketing, advertising questions, we share editors, we share all kinds of ideas. And we do have some overlap in our genres, but we're all really unique. We're not all doing the same type of book, and that's really refreshing, because when you, just like in quilting, when you talk to someone who does things in a different way or with a different focus, they have ideas that we may not have thought of. And so I really love my accountability group. They've become really special friends, and people that if I'm gone on vacation, or if someone's gone for a family event, I really miss that time with them in the morning. So that has definitely become something that I do every day. And then I try and spend at least one full afternoon a week on the nonprofit. I don't necessarily have employees, but I do have family members that help, and they do a lot of work with me. And my niece, especially, she is our graphic designer, and she's a graphic designer by trade. So she very, very good at what she does, but she helps me maintain the website. She does most of our quilt designing, and she's young and brilliant, and she can just whip things out way faster than I can. So that helps. My sister does a lot of behind the scenes work. She is a brilliant writer and a wonderful proofreader. So she really helps me make sure that we're putting very high quality things out there. So, yeah, I can't say that I'm doing it all by myself, but I'm doing a little bit throughout the week, and just trying to stay on top of it. There's more I could do in every facet of my interests, but I'm not willing to walk away from any one thing.
I love hearing the story of what inspired you to start your nonprofit. Would you mind sharing it?
Yeah, so I started quilting back in 1998 when my son was born. He had to be in the hospital for he was in the NICU for 8 days, and when we left the hospital, the doctor said, "Please keep him home until he has his 2 month immunizations." So I was about a month into that and kind of going stir crazy. My mom encouraged me to get out of the house. She would keep the baby for a few hours, and I found myself at my local quilt store. And I had been there with my grandmother. She was not necessarily a quilter, she was more of a crafter. But that was small town in Texas. That's where we went to get notions, to get fabric, things that she was working on for her crafts. So, whatever reason, I found myself there that day. They were doing a quilting beginner class, and it was a 4 block sampler, all done by hand, which is good because I didn't own a sewing machine at that time. I own a few now, but I had so much fun. But we met every week for 4 weeks, and by the time we got to the end of it, Cannon had his immunizations, football season was starting, my husband's a coach, we're a football family, and so I put that hand sampler to the side. It got packed in a box. It stayed there for 10 years. And in 2008, my kids were both in school. My husband was super busy with work. I found myself at another local quilt shop. We lived in Waco, Texas at that time. And I took another beginner class. And I had a blast, but life got hectic and I put it to the side. And then another 10 years later, I look up and I find myself in another quilt shop in Tulsa, Oklahoma, took a third beginner class, and it stuck. And so in the fall of 2018, I was really having fun quilting. I was doing a lot just on my own. I'd taken a few classes, but I was kind of just teaching myself. And I came across Moda Bake Shop's Countdown to Christmas. And I thought this is an amazing way to learn new techniques, because every day it's a new block and the instructions are written for all levels. I just thought, I'm going to do this thing. And I found a box of quilt fabrics that had been left over from my grandmother's stash. And she had passed away with Alzheimer's disease in October of 2014. So she'd been gone a few years. And it was so special to go through that box and to pull out those fabrics. There were fabrics in there from my wedding that she had held on to. There were things that my mom had used to craft over the years. It was just like a treasure trove, and I had so much fun going through it. But I noticed that when I was sharing those blocks on social media or even just with friends, anytime I would share a block that was just something I was working on, I might have 15, 20, 30 likes and comments all together. But now I was sharing this Christmas fabric that had been passed down from my grandmother, and it meant so much because I had lost her to Alzheimer's, and I was being able to use her love of crafting and fabric for her legacy to live on because I love crafting and fabric. And I would share just little bits and pieces of that, and that we had lost her to Alzheimer's disease. And I saw that I was having 200 and 300 comments and likes and text messages and phone calls, and people that I didn't think were paying any attention would say, "Oh, I'm just having so much fun with your quilt blocks. I think it's so special that you're using your grandmother's fabrics." And I immediately saw this overlap between these demographics. You've got quilters and you have people being touched by Alzheimer's disease. And we know that 2/3 of those diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease are women. We know that 2/3 of unpaid caregivers are women. And I will be the first to tell you, I have met some fabulous male quilters, but by and large, our industry is women.
Mhm.
And we are women who love to do for others. We are caregivers. We love to take care of the people in our life and our neighbors and the sweet lady that sits next to us at church, or the teacher that we worked down the hall from for years. That's just who we are. That's just a very common element in quilters, and that's who we see taking care of loved ones in Alzheimer's. So I started thinking, this is a platform that I can merge together, and I can use my love of quilting to get in front of people who need to know more about Alzheimer's disease. So in 2019, that's when Quilting and ALZ was born.
That's terrific. Um, and it, what are the components there with uh, Quilt End ALZ? Because I have followed you on social media over the years, so I know there is a block of the month quilt along. That's
Yes.
a big part of it. But tell us a little bit about the different uh, ways people can get involved under that kind of brand umbrella.
Absolutely. So we have a membership site called the Clubhouse, and it is a place where people can support what we're doing. And you can do it as a monthly donation. You can do it as an annual donation. And we do host a block of the month program within the Clubhouse. It's just kind of a reward, a bonus for those who are in there. We also do a monthly sew in where we just get on Zoom and we talk about what we're working on, kind of like a guild meeting. But I go through that month's block in case there are any questions, or how we put that one together. And just community, that's so important, especially within the quilting world, that we are communicating and staying connected with other quilters, but especially within the Alzheimer's world. And that when someone is going through Alzheimer's, either as a patient or as a caregiver, even if you're a secondary caregiver, maybe you don't live with a grandparent, but it's still part of your life. It's part of your family, and you have things that you want to share, and stories and concerns. So I love building community. Clubhouse is a great way to do that. We also have a Facebook group called Quilting to Mend the Mind, and we have a pretty active group there that shares different projects that they're working on. And then I also do guild presentations. So that has been my main component to get in front of quilters, and that guild presentation has a little bit of my story. It has a whole element that is Alzheimer's education, and then a little bit about how we as quilters can help spread the word, support the Alzheimer's Association and other organizations, and really just be a voice in the fight to end Alzheimer's. And then the final component, and probably the element I'm most proud of is that we have a line of patterns, quilt patterns and fabric kits that go with them. And I mentioned my niece Clara earlier. She designs most of our quilts, and I think she has a really unique and special vision in her creation, because I would say that being young and hip, she has a little bit of a modern quilt bend to her, but she's an old soul and she loves traditional prints. And I just think that we merge those two. I'm probably a much more traditional quilter. My is an ultra modern quilter, and then my niece is kind of in the middle of the two of us. So I feel like our product line is different from anything else out there, and it's a really fun way to see people supporting the nonprofit, loving the quilts that they're making, and sharing those quilts. And then when they're sharing those online or at their guild meetings or with their friends, and they say, "Where did that pattern come from?" And that opens the door to get to tell people about what we're doing for Alzheimer's disease.
I love that it's a family thing. Like you've
Yes,
got everyone involved.
yes, absolutely.
So there's a lot of components there that match with other quilt businesses in terms of, pattern design,
Mhm.
the membership group, the merchandise that you've got associated with all that. But then there's the nonprofit component. So
Mhm.
can you speak to that? Because I know there are other quilters who have those causes near and dear to their hearts and maybe aren't sure of what they can do to support a charitable effort as quote a quilt business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I tell people we are a regular quilt business. We just take our profit margin and we give that back to the fight to end Alzheimer's disease. And it's a blessing to be able to do that. And some of that is because it is not my primary job. And that's why I love the name of the podcast, because I'm definitely doing my quilt business on the side. And I try to be very open and upfront about that, because this is not my 40-hour a week job. This is a way that I can connect quilters with the fight to end Alzheimer's disease, but it is on the side. And if I was using Quilting ALZ to keep the lights on, then it would be very difficult. And so partnering with other quilt businesses is perfect, because that collaboration allows me to get our mission and message in front of more people, but it also allows that other quilt business to support something and to participate in an activity, a project, an event that's really special to them. But they do need their quilt business to keep the lights on. And so it's really important that they're not giving up their revenue in that way. And so the collaborations work really well. We've done the nonprofit. I always say we, because I feel like it's a community. It's not just me. I love that in the United States there's not actually an owner to a nonprofit, and I don't know if people realize that. You have a board of directors, but there's no such thing as owning a nonprofit. And I take that to heart. So we are definitely a community. But we've done some projects where guilds have come together and done like a sew day and put a quilt together that they then donated to an event, usually like a walk to end Alzheimer's event or something. And that raises money for the Alzheimer's Association or another charitable organization. I've seen them do lap quilts, where we helped do a workshop and then they donated the lap quilts to a dementia center in town, a memory care facility. So there are a lot of different ways that we can collaborate. We've done some things where a designer creates a pattern and then we sell it through Quilt End ALZ, or they sell it on their website and a portion of the proceeds go back to Quilt End ALZ. It's what I say about the Pinterest age is there's no end to the amazing ideas, right? Like I always say that I'm happy that I got married before Pinterest came along because there's just too many great things out there. And that's really how collaborations are. I know both of you do them within your quilt businesses and even this podcast. I mean, it's a collaboration. And so it's an opportunity to for both businesses to further their mission. And I love that.
I'd love to switch gears and kind of bring you back to your books.
Okay.
So, your books, are they, because I'm currently writing a book, so I'm really curious about your publishing process. Can you share a little bit how
Okay.
you publish your books?
So I am an independent publisher. I actually started a publishing house called Books Are Ubiquitous. My dad is an avid reader, and he told me probably 10 or 15 years ago, if I ever was able to open a bookstore, I would call it Books Are Ubiquitous. And I will tell you that that particular day, I thought, ubiquitous, what does that word mean again? I had to go look it up, and it means that books are everywhere, and they are. Even at a time where fewer people are picking up a print copy, there are more books published today than any other time in history. And so books really are everywhere, and they're so important. We live in such a digital age, such a picture and image driven age, that it's so important to let our brains have that opportunity to imagine just based off the words that we read. And I've seen several little memes go through social media that say we love books so much because we create the movie that goes with the book. And then that's also why we don't love the movie as much as the book when we go see a movie based on a book that we've read, because we've already created the movie in our imagination. And so I created this business called Books Are Ubiquitous, and I chose independent publishing on purpose. I thought about sending out some query letters. I thought about looking for an agent to try and sell my book. But I will be really honest, I do not expect my books to solve world peace. I don't expect to win a Pulitzer Prize. I want to get my books into the hands of people who can enjoy them for 2 or 3 hours in an afternoon, snuggled up under their favorite quilt, or sitting out by the pool, or on an airplane, or on vacation. And then when they close the book, they feel this warm sense of joy. They knew they were going to get a happy ending. They knew it was going to have a wonderful love story. There was going to be a lot of sizzle, but there's no sex in my books. It's very much of wholesome, cozy romance. They're set in or around a small town. It's a fictional small town that I created called Green Hills, Oklahoma. And the families, the friends, the community, it's all the way that I think the world should exist. And so it might be a little simple, or a little perfect, or a little bit unrealistic, but it could happen, and people can be that way. It's a choice. We get to choose if we're going to uplift or tear down. We get to choose if we're going to lead with love or lead with criticism. And it just so happens that in Green Hills, they make all the best choices. So I created my town. I knew that I wanted these books to be um, something that I could control. And that probably speaks a lot to that Enneagram type that I mentioned in the beginning. But I didn't want to spend years trying to find an agent, trying to find a publishing house, going through edits, changing this, changing that. They're not perfect books. I think they're adorable. I think they're fun characters. They really do take you on a bit of a roller coaster ride. They're emotional. I cry when I write them. I cry when I proofread them. I cry when I listen to the audio tape of the audio book. I laugh. I get really excited. I get nervous. So I feel like I take my readers on this wonderful journey, but the journey didn't need to take years to publish. So I actually did a course very similar to what we did in our quilt business course that we took together. I did an online curriculum for how to become a self-publisher and how, as a writer, to get your book out there. And it was great because it answered the questions I didn't know to ask. And I learned a lot about the industry, and it's always changing, it's always evolving. But I've had a nice level of success. I have 5 books out in the Green Hills series. In addition, I've boxed the first 4. They're a little mini series, and so I have that box set out there. And then I love to share recipes. I love cooking and baking, and so I pulled some of my favorite recipes from those first 4 books that made up that mini series, and I created a cookbook that goes along with those first 4 books. So that has been a ton of fun. I actually have a quilt pattern that goes with each book too, but I haven't exactly found the time to test my patterns yet. So those will be coming someday.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that because you have woven quilting it throughout your books, so that is a natural progression to. So we'll throw that out there for some other quilters who are looking for a collaboration. That
Yes.
that
You
Green
know, that
Hills
is,
needs a quilt shop to come
yeah,
along and make the
that's
samples.
That's the best idea, and I you guys probably know Catherine LeBlanc. She
Mhm.
is also a quilter, has Dragonfly Design Studio or Quilt Studio. Well, she and I met through the quilting industry and then realized that we were both in this self-publishing school curriculum together. And she is one that's on that writing group that I've mentioned, that we meet on Zoom. And her quilts, so she writes cozy mystery, and they are very much quilting cozy mysteries. So the quilt story is a main element. And I mentioned mine, the romance is the main element, and we have um, sideline stories, but her quilts really do carry the story. And she was feeling that same thing, like, okay, I've got a quilt that goes with this book, but I don't have the time to turn around and get the pattern done and tested. And so she put out a call for quilters to help her. And so she's actually collaborating in that way. And when a book comes out, a quilter has actually designed the quilt, and then she builds the book around that design. So she's way ahead of me. She's way smarter than I am. I would love some help getting my quilt patterns out there, because I love the element of the quilt in my books. And when I first started writing, I wrote down some really important brand elements, some things that I wanted my readers to know they were going to get in every single book. And the stories are different, the characters have different flaws and personalities, but there were some elements. So I mentioned a few of them earlier. Number one, I wanted my covers to be really lovely. I wanted you to pick up this book and I wanted you to feel a happiness from it. And I knew that I wanted them to be romance, which means you're always going to get a happily ever after. If you aren't familiar with different key factors of genres, the difference in women's fiction and romance is that women's fiction, you may or may not get a happy ending, and you primarily see the book just from the female's perspective, to where romance, you get a lot of back and forth between the main characters, between in the couple. So I knew I was going to do romance. I knew I was going to have a happily ever after. I knew that they were going to be filled with faith. I'm pretty open, and my husband and I both, and our children, about our Christianity and about our journey, and about just the fact that that is an important part of who we are. People who know us know that we stand for faith, and then family, and then football, or whatever other activity we're doing. But my books don't necessarily call for a call for salvation. They're not. That's not included. But you're definitely going to see examples of people living in that lifestyle and that decision and that belief. So I definitely think that they can be considered Christian fiction. They can be considered inspirational, uplifting fiction. There are always quilts, quilters, and quilting in each one. There's some tie back to the original community in Green Hills. There is also a sideline story of Alzheimer's in every book, and how families are dealing with it, how they recognize it, how they deal through the grief of it and the loss of it. And I don't want my books to be sad downers, But the reality is we are about 30 to 35 years behind the advancements in breast cancer treatment and cures. And I always give this story. When I was in junior high, and we in biology or science or whatever, and they're talking about women's health and breast issues and breast cancer, no one really talked about it. It was very hush hush. All the boys turned bright red. You just, it was just one of those things that the teacher just kind of had to get over and get through. And when my children were in junior high, and it's October, and we're doing pink out football games, and we're doing pink pep rallies, and we're wearing pink to school, and my kids jump in the car and they're like, Mom, I need $10. It's breast cancer week. I need to get my t-shirt. It had become part of the vernacular, part of our conversation. It wasn't something that we were embarrassed to talk about. It wasn't something we were embarrassed to share. There was no stigma with being diagnosed. And because of that, it's just a natural progression of medicine. It becomes something that the normal population is comfortable with, and then they start questioning it, and then they start asking more, and then they start demanding treatment, and then they start looking for a cure. And as the voice gets louder, the money gets greater. And it takes billions and billions of dollars in research and government funding before we get really good treatment and potential cures. And so Alzheimer's disease and all related dementia, we are a good 30 to 35 years behind breast cancer science. And I want to include dementia and Alzheimer's disease in my books because I want it to be something that people feel comfortable talking about. So those are definitely in there. I also have food and recipes in every book. And I love music. My whole family does. It's something that we listen to all genres of music. And it's a point of inspiration as I'm writing my books. And so there is a playlist now. The first probably year and a half or 2 years that I was publishing them, I was just sharing the playlist on Spotify. And then someone said, I wish you would have written that down. I was like, that's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? So I've gone back and added the playlist in the back of the books. And I'm trying to think. That's probably the bulk of those brand elements, but that's what you're going to find in each story.
I love that you've been able to weave all those together. That's amazing.
Thank you.
With your publishing, do you? I know you mentioned having an ebook and an audiobook. Do you also have a paperback or
I do. So every book comes out in 4 formats. I sell autographed hardcovers on my, actually all 4 are available on my website, but the only place that you can get autographed hardcovers are either from my website or at a book signing. And I create this is where my sweet niece Clara and my daughter helps me with a lot of these too. But I create a commemorative postcard and a bookmark for each book. And so those come with the autographed hardcover. I also sell a paperback, and then the ebook, and then the audiobook. So every book is available in 4 formats.
I think that is brilliant. I hope our listeners are taking note that they can have several formats for their book, having special signed hardback books. I think that would be amazing for our audience to participate in. I love that.
Yes. I'm a book collector, so it was really important to me that I be able to look at a bookshelf and see my legacy of books on the shelf.
That's wonderful. And you've done a good job with your covers. I see a glimpse of something and I can say, and I'm disappointed if it's something similar and not Green Hills.
Oh.
A lot of quilters think they need to publish their patterns in a book and go to that bigger format because it tends to lend a little more authority. Have you found the similar benefit now to being a published author, that you can relay that into more followers, more participation in your Quilt to End ALZ? efforts?
Yeah, so I definitely can see how having published gives you a bit of expertise. And within the quilting world, um, it's more challenging, right? Because the patterns don't always tell a story. It's just such a visual thing. Like, do I like this pattern or does it not speak to me? But I also think that launching products is really important. We live in a world, whether it's right or wrong, we want the entire season to drop on Netflix. We want to be able to know the ending when we know the beginning, and we like new stuff. And so I have found with both my quilting things, like patterns that we do through Quilting ALZ, as well as my Green Hills series of fiction books, whenever I have something new to share, there's a huge spike in following, as well as revenue, as well as likes and shares and conversations. And then when you get out of that launch mode, there are a million other launches going on, and so you can very easily get caught in this hamster wheel of I've always got to be launching something new every single week. It's got to be something new. That's what we call a rapid launch. And so I think that doing pattern books really does present a challenge, because you spend a lot of time, you have one launch, and it may have a dozen patterns in it, as opposed to doing individual pattern launches where you get 12 launches out of that same amount of work. So I think the books definitely lend expertise, but I think that rapid launches of individual items actually keep you more relevant.
Mm, interesting perspective. Thanks for sharing.
So, what have you found to be the best way to get your name out there?
I wish that I knew the right answer on that. I think that engagement, and I mentioned that one of my big goals for 2024 was to do a better job with my time blocking. And one reason behind that is I want to build my community more so than just my follower number. And I didn't feel like over 2023, I saw my numbers increasing. I saw my followers increasing on Instagram. I saw my Welcome to Green Hills group on Facebook get bigger and bigger. But I didn't know who those people were. I couldn't tell you, except for the ones that are really active, the ones that comment on every single post, or every single article, or share the blog. Those that's a handful that you really do know. But what about the other, thousands? One of my goals within my book business is to have 10,000 super fans. And a super fan in whatever industry you're working in, this is someone who feels like they're your friend. They like you as a human because you have let them get to know you. They love your product. They are a proponent of it. They share your product. They rave about it. They review it. You are 5-star to them. And when you have a new product, whether it is a book once every 5 years, or it's that rapid launch of a bunch of things in at 1 year, they are going to support you. They are going to buy it. They're going to buy it early. They're going to tell everybody else they need to buy it. They are your partner in this business and in this industry. And I feel like if you can find 10,000 super fans, you can be at the top of your game no matter what game you choose, whether that is designing fabric, that is teaching classes, that is sharing guild presentations, that's writing books, that whatever it is that you're doing, whatever you're producing and sharing with the world, if you have 10,000 friends that love what you're doing, you're going to be successful. And I've had good luck in building my numbers. One of my goals for 2023 was to get my email distribution list to 10,000 people. And I did. And when I surpassed it, I thought, okay, yay, I'm there. And I'm like, but I don't know them. I don't know who those 10,000 people are. And so in 2024, I'm much less about building that number and more about honing that number, really trying to get to know those people. And the only way I know how to do that is to let them get to know me. So I'm doing more videos. I'm sharing our life. My newsletter is a combination of me and coach and our two children and our hobbies and our football life and our coaching world and books and yoga and Alzheimer's disease, like all the things that are part of my day-to-day life. That's part of my online community. That's part of my Instagram. That's part of my newsletter. Just really being myself and letting people feel like they are in that sphere so that then I can get to know them. Because once they feel comfortable with me, then they'll start sharing about themselves. And that's what I'm really excited to do, is get to know new people. And so I would say that that's the most important part about building your audience, whatever your industry is, quilts, books, something totally different. It's really about the relationships.
Yeah, that's terrific. Anything else that you can share or tease us about for upcoming things in 2024?
Oh goodness. Well, I think I'm going to just try and stay on the path that I'm on right now. I did start something new yesterday. So back in 2020, when we were doing Quilt Patch, I had just had my knee replaced, and I was pretty young to have that done. And the younger you are, the more painful it is, because my bones were very healthy. My nerve bundles were very healthy. My muscles were very healthy. It was just this knee joint that was not healthy. And so all of those things were more painful, because now we're cutting through healthy bone and we're cutting through dense nerve bundles. And I had a rough time after my surgery, and I spent hours and hours and hours in one of those continuous motion machines. And I laid on the couch. It's the only place that I could sleep. It was the only place that I was not in a tremendous amount of pain. And I discovered the Great British Bake Off, which is now called the Great British Baking Show. And we have an American version called the Great American Baking Show. And I noticed over the weekend that they've opened their applications for 2024. And I would not say that I am a huge baker. I have certain things that I like to bake, but I want to see if I could actually submit an application to this thing. So, of course, I don't just say, hey, let me fill out an application. Instead, I devised this whole calendar. Somewhere in the application information, I read that you have to be willing to go to England for 40 days, because even though it's the Great American Bake Off, you still go over there to film it. And I thought, okay, do I have it in me to cook or bake for 40 straight days? So I'm testing myself, and I'm sharing every day on my blog. And if you've watched the Great British Baking Show, they have 3 bakes per theme, and each theme is a week. So I devised 10 themes, and I came up with 3 bakes, and I have a signature for each of my 3, each of my themes. And one of my 3 bakes is my signature bake. My weeks are only 4 days long, though. So I'm getting through this in 40 days. And at the end of the 40 days, I'm hoping that my community and all of my friends and followers will help me decide, okay, you've seen what I'm capable of doing. Is this even worth submitting this application or not? So I am doing that over the next 40 days, and that's going to be a ton of fun. And it's a way to share what I'm doing and not just beat people over the head with Alzheimer's disease and Green Hills fiction books. But those are a big part of who I am. So those will always be around too.
Yeah, yeah, what a fun challenge you've set for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Congratulations and good luck with,
Thank
um,
you.
the show application. Yeah, that's great. One thing
Experiment.
that, I know comes up and that is a cause near and dear to your heart in June is the longest day.
Yes.
So do you have will Quilts to End ALZ have something going on for that?
We will for sure. Our family is in a little bit of a transition. My husband was coaching at Auburn University last year, and this spring he's coaching for a United Football League team. And I don't know what the fall is going to look like. So I don't know where I'm going to be in June.
Mhm.
But one of the things, and this is the perfect place to share it because I think that your audience is going to have some really good ideas for how I could tackle this. But the longest day is an opportunity for people to do an activity they love in recognition and in fundraising for Alzheimer's disease. And of course, I love to do something with quilting. And that's really where Quilt End ALZ, that was the catalyst that started it. I was going to do a quilting event. And then a friend of mine said, listen, quilting is expensive. You quilt all year long. You fight Alzheimer's disease all year long. Let's set you up as a nonprofit so that you at least have the tax benefit of it being nonprofit. You're underwriting it anyway, so it's the same difference. But now let's go ahead and make this something that you can do year round. But the longest day event, it happens on the summer solstice. The day with the most light is the day that we have the most fight, is where all that comes from. And I would love to see Quilt to End ALZ helping people do quilting events for the longest day all over the country. And whether that is you register with Quilt to End ALZ's longest day team, and then we have an annual pattern. I certainly would provide the materials that you need to share information and Alzheimer's education. And there are some other things similar to that. I know that there's a National Jelly Roll Day where everyone kind of comes together and focuses on the same thing on the same day. I would love to see something like that happen for Quilt to End ALZ that focuses on the longest day campaign, where we are a team of individual events across the country, and we're really making a big impact as a nation of quilters. And I have dreamed of this. I have started work on it and stalled out probably a dozen times in the last 5 years. And I would love to have that help and that vision of how we can make this a real thing.
Okay, well, we're getting the word out, so
Yeah,
let's
that's awesome.
help, Ashley with those efforts on the longest day. So,
Yeah.
um, we have had a wonderful conversation, and I'd love to talk for hours more, but let's get into those rapid fire questions that we ask
Okay.
all of our guests. And we've put a spin instead of asking about your favorite color, what color do you struggle to put into your quilts?
Black. Yes, I really do. Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's the first we've
black
had.
can be really interesting, obviously with contrast there if you're going for the black and
Mhm.
white, but yeah, it could be a little.
I tend more towards navy and dark chocolate browns.
Mm,
But I don't know, when I lay my fabrics out, I have a hard time with black.
mm,
Yeah.
interesting.
Our next rapid fire, I like focus my eyes. Um, do you prefer yardage or pre-cuts?
Yardage. You can kinda see behind me if I
Mhm.
move the right way.
Oh,
This is my office/sewing studio, and when it's supposed to be a big game room, in the upstairs of our home, and I had these bookcases made, and I literally have bolts and bolts and yards of fabric. I love fabric. I have enough fabric that I could never buy anymore, and I have enough to quilt the rest of my life, but that doesn't happen.
And along those lines, what is your favorite notion or tool that you use most often when you're quilting?
Well, you're gonna laugh, but I have noticed over the last couple years that I have to have a really good light to sew, and I have one of those flexible arm lamps that my mom got me for my birthday a few years ago, and I literally have to have that light. And so it's not a traditional notion, but it is my go-to tool right now.
I can appreciate that.
Yes.
What is the most rewarding part of your business? And I would love to hear like both, like from your books or from your ALZ.
Yeah, so I think for the quilting business, the most rewarding part is when I have been at a guild and when it is over and people come up and say, I needed that, or I didn't understand and now I do, or thank you for letting me know I'm not alone. Like I thought I was on an island, and you've really shown me that I'm not by myself. That's probably the very most rewarding part on the quilting side. On the book side, I love hearing from my readers. And I think the most rewarding part is when they get really excited about a certain character. And different people love different characters for different reasons, but it is so rewarding to hear other people tell me about my books. It's fun.
And kind of a random guessing game. How many quilts are in the room with you right now? Like,
There
we're
are
gonna say finished quilts.
finished quilts. Yeah, there are literally dozens because I have a sample quilt for every quilt that every pattern that we make for Quilt to End ALZ. And then I have all of my personal quilts that I've made. And I've been going through after Christmas, washing all the Christmas quilts. So just Christmas quilts, I probably have 8 in here right now. So I'm kind of surrounded by quilts at the moment.
That's wonderful.
And our last question is, who is inspiring you right now?
That is such a hard question. I was thinking, maybe we'll run out of time. They can't ask me that one. I have to tell you, I mentioned Catherine LeBlanc earlier, and this girl is just on fire. Like, she inspires me and impresses me every single day. She is so creative in both her quilting business, her writing business, how she puts those together, how she connects people, and she entertains. And I think that at the end of the day, if you're writing fiction, that is your goal. You want to bring joy and giggles and fun into people's lives. And I just sit back every morning and I see what she's accomplishing. I read her books. We work off each other a lot. If one of us is stuck on a story, we'll jump on Zoom and hash something out. And I just have to say that her quilt business is incredible. Her quilting itself is beautiful. Her stories are fun and they make me laugh. And her friendship is really, really special to me. So I have to say that's who's really impressing me right now, inspiring me.
Thank you so much for sharing. Well,
Thank
that brings
you.
us to the end of our questions, but we want to make sure that people know how to find you.
Yes. Okay. So if you Google Ashli Montgomery or Quilt End ALZ or Virginia Dale Smith, which is my pen name, we didn't get into that as much, but if you Google any of those things, the first hit should be my website, which is ashlymontgomery.com. Ashli spelled a little different. It's Li instead of with an EY. But that is the best place to reach me. You can email me from there. You can follow me on social media. Probably the best way to really stay in touch is to subscribe to my newsletter. It's newspaper style. It's called the Gazette, and it's the local newspaper for Green Hills. And I would love to tell you that I'm really consistent and I get it out every single week, but I don't. And I share as often as I can, but I don't inundate. So I would love for people to join me there in the Gazette and hear what I have going on and be part of that community. Again, I think that relationships, friendships, community is just vitally important. It's how God made us. We're wired for that social aspect of our life. We're wired to have friends and be a friend. And I think that's really important.
Thank you so much for sharing all about your quilting and your book series and all your fabulous bits of advice for us. And it's been a pleasure having you, Ashli. We wish you much success.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun talking. Anytime you need someone to fill in, give me a call because I can go for hours.
Well, that was a lot of fun catching up with Ashli and all the things she has going on. What was your biggest takeaway, Tori?
So I'm writing a book at the moment. So my biggest takeaway, the thing that's swinging around in my mind and making me generate ideas over here, is how she shared her different formats for her books. So she said she had a hardcover, a softcover, an audiobook, an ebook, and then for her, I'm not sure if she said for releases or just for an event, but she also includes a bookmark and a postcard. And I think that's something that we can look at is kind of expanding what we can do with our artwork and with our books. If we're making, like, I'm making a it's called Workshops Unleashed, so it's not a pattern book per se, but maybe taking your favorite quilt pattern that you put in that book, something that really kind of sums up the whole book, and creating a bookmark out of it or a postcard out of it or what have you, so that you can include it with your offer. And I think that's probably my biggest takeaway. Is my mind is like swimming with ideas. So what was your biggest takeaway, Andi?
I really loved her description of brand elements. And she was talking about her Green Hills fiction series and the different components that she makes sure are included in every single one. And that just resonated so much with me in terms of building a business, that if you identify those core principles, maybe values and beliefs that are, really important to you, you can express those and share those in every single one of your offers. So for quilters, it might be a certain design element, a certain pattern of star, one block element that you can return to and explore. It could be a certain color combination that, is easily identifiable as your signature. So that, like you said, your mind starts spinning with those ideas. And when she was listing her brand elements, I thought, oh, that's really important to know and identify for yourself.
Yeah, when you were talking about that, I remembered like running. I think it was Running Stitch. I bought her book because I loved it so much. I'm gonna grab it. But it was Julie Burton, Imperfect, Embracing Improv Quilting. So if you're on YouTube, you can see the cover of it. And she has a theme throughout and uses one of her values. She's a military spouse. And I think almost every quilt in here has to do with her personal journey. And a lot of them have to do with military spouse things. And that was a cool way that she incorporated her journey and herself in her quilting, was to kind of use, or it looks like she's been inspired by all the things around her to do with the military. Like there's one of my favorite ones that she named was the moving sticker quilt, where they have little moving stickers on everything. I loved that. But yeah, I think that was a great one. A great thing to point out for our listeners.
Yeah, so there was a lot jam-packed in that conversation with Ashli. So I hope our listeners will go back, take some notes, let us know, reach out to us, either commenting on our YouTube video or on our website, send us an email and let us know how much you enjoyed this episode as well. What a great discussion. If you enjoyed this episode of Quilting on the Side, please leave us a review on whichever platform you're listening. It can be iTunes, Spotify, or even our YouTube channel.
And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next chat. Until then, remember to have fun in your business and do a little quilting on the side.